Transfer portal season is officially underway, and we have the latest breaking news for you in College Station.
You are Locked On Aggies, your daily podcast on the Texas A&M Aggies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. I'm your host, Matt Galatzan of Texas A&M Aggies on SI. Thank you for tuning into Locked On Aggies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. I'm joined by Harrison Reno. And Harrison, we have a lot of movement in the transfer portal so far. Aggies have filled a few needs thus far. 6 commitments so far for Texas A&M in the early days of the transfer portal palooza, transfer portal madness, whatever you want to call it. And things are starting to look pretty good in College Station. The first commitment was from tight end Houston Thomas. Obviously, the Aggies had a bunch of losses at tight end. Amari Niblack, Theo Melanostrom, Nate Borkacher, all moving on. Melanostrom to the portal, the other 2 to the NFL or to graduation. So that was a big need there. Obviously, the loss of Scooby Williams to the NFL was big, and they bring in Ray Coney out of Tulsa. And we'll get into some other ones as well. But those were the first 2 commitments, and both of those are not necessarily home run hits or big time splashes, but they come at positions of big need for the Aggies.
Absolutely. And tight end was kind of like the first position we talked about the other day, last time I was on the show, which felt like a month ago. It was only like a week ago in terms of the exodus at the position. You had both your tight ends kind of go into the portal, not much returning production left on the roster, and you had to go out and get some guys. I know we talked about a couple guys who have now either announced they're going elsewhere. I know Penn State took the Brosmer kid out of Iowa State. I mean, they've taken everybody from Iowa State over there at Penn State.
Yeah.
But you go get a guy in a guy you faced before this season, which I've noticed kind of that trend across college football is we're starting to see some guys, if you face somebody in the season, they give you trouble in the season. Well, then you go and get them maybe in the portal later on. Houston Thomas, a College Station native, like coming home from UTSA to Texas A&M. Obviously, there's going to be a step up in play for him in terms of competition. And then today you bring in another tight end, or yesterday you bring in another tight end out of Fresno State. So Richie Anderson, we don't know much about these kids so far. Obviously, it's still so early in the process, and they're obviously playing at lower divisions of football in terms of lower competition. Now they're going to come to the SEC and play for Texas A&M, and what they hope to, have breakout years, star for the Aggies. What I'm most curious about, Matt, is the kicker situation. Obviously, that's been the Achilles heel this year for A&M, whether it was Zirkle or Randy Bond. And I know everybody enjoys talking about transfer kickers, but you get one out of Illinois, and now you have one. So we'll see what that's like coming in the fall. But outside of that, I think the Cohen Echols at LSU, that's one to watch. LSU's basically had its whole entire offensive line at the portal, and I know they weren't the best unit in the world last year, but anytime you can go get not only just a lineman from the portal, which I think line over the last few years, it's been rare to see a lot of top end linemen hit the portal, but when they do, they've turned out to be some hits, and Echols may be in the next line of that. But I think the most important thing here, Matt, is you look at some of the guys they brought in, and you look at the eligibility. Echols is a redshirt freshman. Alano, the kicker, is a junior, going to be a rising senior. Byard is a junior, going to be a rising senior. Coney, going to be a rising senior. You get Houston Thomas, a rising redshirt senior. So some of these guys, more than others, will have more than just 1 year of eligibility. We're going to be on this roster for more than just one season, you hope. And that's always good in terms of building a sustainable team and, not just going to get these one and done guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't be more pleased with what the Aggies have done thus far in the portal. Starting at tight end, Houston Thomas, 10.2 yards per catch, 34 catches, 347 yards, productive there at a UTSA team that, really was more of a running team with that running back Robert Henry Jr., who Aggie fans will remember from the season opener very well. And Richie Anderson, 31 catches, 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. It gives me sort of shades of what they did last year in the portal when they brought in Borkature and Micah Riley, a couple of dudes that didn't put up huge numbers last season before they came to College Station, and they come in this year and they have pretty solid seasons, particularly Borkature, who was great for the Aggies on multiple occasions. You talk about the kicker, David Alano, with the accuracy issues that Texas A&M had this year. This kid just happened to go 87%, 20 of 23 on field goals. Only missed 1 from 20 to 29, 1 from 30 to 39, and 1 from 40 to 49. So a very accurate, reliable kicker from a power conference who won't be afraid of the big-time lights. That's obviously a good one. And then perhaps my favorite, I mean, you talk about Cohen Echols, who, I mean, it's kind of hard to bring up stats when you talk about an offensive lineman. But young, talented, powerful, physical, athletic, all the things you want in an offensive lineman. He can come in and play left or right guard and help replace the losses that you've had up front for Texas A&M, which are significant along the offensive line, and they will have more offensive line needs as this thing goes forward, but that's just kind of the start of it. But my favorite commitment so far for the Aggies has to be to Fleek Byard out of Colorado. Really, really good safety, 2 years of eligibility remaining for him. 58 solo tackles, 79 total tackles as a safety. He had half a sack, 2 forced fumbles, and a pick. He was one of the best safeties in the Big Ten, and he comes in a pretty big position of need because you lose Bryce Anderson. Yes, you're getting Marcus Ratcliffe back. Yes, you're getting you're getting Dalton Brooks back, but you still need another body back there. This guy could potentially play in the slot if you need him to at nickel, or you could figure out ways to mix and match back there with the safety combinations. But he's a very, very talented player at a big position. And that's really important to get some help back there in the secondary when you've been burned a few times in the passing game so far this season.
Yeah, and we'll see if they add more. I think we're obviously going to get into the next segment about remaining thoughts and needs for the portal. I'm quite curious to see kind of what's next for them. But I think to start, there hasn't necessarily been fireworks right now for Texas A&M. But Matt, I don't know about you, but across college football, I don't think there has been fireworks so far. Aside if you're Cody Campbell and Texas Tech, you're just out here throwing around $5 million, a couple days into the portal. But I think the fireworks are still to come potentially for the Aggies. In filling needs, you're hitting darts on the dartboard right now. You got a guy at linebacker, you got 2 tight ends, you got a safety, you got an interior offensive lineman who is important, not only just like potentially coming in and competing right away, but down the line has 3 years of eligibility left. I think that's huge in terms of having some continuity going forward. You bring in you bring in a kicker that you sorely needed after last year. It's a good start, Matt. But as we're about to get into, there's going to be some fireworks potentially yet to come.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to run through some of the portal visitors that have come in recent days or that have scheduled visits for Texas A&M. We talked about most of these on Friday. By the way, congrats to Oklahoma real quick. They just landed the guy with the best name in the transfer portal by a mile. Rocky Beers out of Colorado State has committed to Oklahoma, so good news for the Sooners there. That is going to be an NIL dream in Norman. But just some of the names that have come in so far for visits that we haven't talked about yet. Brandon Davis-Swain, defensive lineman from Colorado, visited over the weekend. Tyree Adams out of LSU visited over the weekend. We all know that Cam Coleman was in College Station over the weekend as well. Then you talk about Stephylan Green, defensive lineman out of Clemson, who's going to visit Tuesday and Wednesday. And then Kamorian Morgan, the Baylor edge, is planning a visit. It is not scheduled yet, as well as Anto Saka out of Northwestern, another edge, is planning a visit but has not yet announced the dates. So you can see a pretty heavy emphasis on the defensive line, which makes sense because you needed bodies on the interior. You're losing Cassius Howell. and you lost Solomon Williams on the edge. So you need to reinvest on that edge and find another difference maker there. It seems like they're starting to do some of those things as well. And we're going to get into more needs, but those are just some of the portal visitors that we've seen over the last couple days, coming into the next couple of days, and that have yet to visit, but are planning them. And there's going to be more, and we will continue bringing them as we go forward. But in our next segment, we are going to get into the remaining needs for Texas A&M, what we feel they need to attack, and maybe a couple of guys that make sense in those veins. So stick with us after this break, and we'll be right back. Fridays always feel different during basketball season. FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 Eastern or 5 to 6:30 Central have become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. The timing is perfect right before the games, right before the weekend starts. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 Eastern or 5 to 6:30 Central Time. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Before we continue on to this next segment, I just want to give a quick shout-out to our loyal listeners. Thank you for making Locked On Aggies your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you haven't already, go check out our new Everydayer Club, access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Aggies, compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every major podcast app. You get an invite to the members-only Locked On Everydayer Discord server, which includes a group chat just for listeners of this show. And I will be hanging out in there as well, so you can come yell at me if you want to for my takes that you don't like or for my takes that you love. And you can go to lockedonaggies.supercast.com or tap the link in the show notes to learn more about that. But Harrison, still some pretty big needs for Texas A&M heading into the remainder of the transfer portal window, which lasts for another 11 days as we record this. Obviously, we talked about some of those visitors. It was along the defensive front, so we probably won't hit that too much, though I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit. But there are still a lot of other needs that we need to address in College Station. I think number one on the offensive side, we can talk about offensive line, and we will, but I think you need to go get a number one wide receiver. You got to find a big X receiver who can win downfield. We talked about that a lot the last time you were on. Cam Coleman really fits that mold, and he visited College Station over the weekend. And then it was almost like as soon as I published this show, or maybe it was right before I published this show, who visited the portal or who visited Texas A&M or scheduled visit? Cam Coleman. It's almost like we were telepathic, Harrison. I'm telling you something. But they seem to be very in on him. He is a very big need for them. By all accounts, from what I've heard, the visit went very well. He is now flown home to Alabama after visiting Texas before he visited A&M and then visiting College Station. He is now flown home. So that would lead you to believe that maybe he is down to those two schools. He did talk about having visits with Texas Tech and USC, among others, and Alabama, I believe. He still could take those visits. But the fact that he has flown home now leads you to believe that maybe he has come to at least some sort of a decision or has shortened his list. He is still number one on my needs for the Aggies as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and it's really not, frankly, close. Like, he is the top receiver in the portal. I think he might even be the number one player in the portal. And I know sometimes people put the quarterback position in there, but we've all watched Cam Coleman play. I don't know if there's a quarterback in this portal that I would say you need over Cam Coleman, because Cam Coleman's going to make you a better quarterback, whether you're Jackson Arnold or you're Marcel Reed. He's going to make you a better quarterback. He's going to make you right a lot of the times, not going to make you wrong. And that's important. And we talked about A&M's receivers this past year. It's one of the best receiver rooms, if not, I think Mike Elko called it the best receiver room that the Aggies have had in quite some time, in Craver and Kevin Concepcion. The one limitation was they didn't have that 50-50 ball guy. They had two downfield threats, two burners in Concepcion and Craver, guys who can win over the top of speed, but there's nobody that you could put on the outside at 6'5" and go up and win it in the air. Go be that dominant, true X receiver. And Cam Coleman gives you that. I think he would bring obviously a tremendous talent to the room, but also bring some versatility to the offense, just in terms of it felt Miami made A&M play in a phone booth that game. Obviously, the winds were obviously an issue in terms of having to throw the ball downfield. You're having to fight the winds to do that. But Miami kind of made A&M kind of play sideline to sideline with a quick passing game and really put curtains over the top of that defense. Cam Coleman would kind of eliminate those because obviously he's going to take coverage over to his side pretty much every time. And why would you not want Mario Craver one-on-one? Or vice versa. If Craver's getting drawing two, then you leave Cam Coleman one-on-one. So you get the best of both worlds here, Matt. If you get Cam Coleman, you complete this receiver room, because just having him out there is, like, in essence, having like two receivers out there, because he's going to draw two defenders pretty much every time, just because of the talent he is.
Yeah, absolutely. And, here's the thing about Cam Coleman and the big X receiver and all that stuff. He can mask a lot of quarterback issues just by going up and saving you with those 50-50 balls. I mean, Texas A&M relied on that heavily with Noah Thomas before he transferred. And when he left and went to Georgia, it just left a big vacuum at that spot. And it's just a critical part of a dynamic passing game. I mean, you get that aspect into your passing game, and it feels like it unlocks everything else. So that's why I think that one is so important. Obviously, offensive line, as we talked about, Carius Kearney, I think from LSU is one guy that people are waiting on to see what happens with him. I know LSU was like holding on to his paperwork and not letting him officially enter the portal as long as they could, which he in turn went on social media and kind of flamed LSU football for, a la Lane Kiffin. So that'll be interesting to watch. There are some other guys out there as well. But another outside of offensive line, another kind of critical part for me on offense, I think would be running back. Because I know you've got the burner with Ruben Owens, and you've got Jamarian Morrow, and you got KJ Edwards coming in, who, is kind of a do-it-all, lightning back a little bit. But I think you need that big power back. I really do in this offense. That's what Le'Veon Moss was so good at. That's what really unlocked this Aggies rushing attack. Kind of like, obviously not the same players necessarily, but kind of like Lindale White used to do for USC when he was paired with Reggie Bush. I mean, it was really hard to defend that rushing attack because you had those two guys coming at you in so many different ways. A&M needs to add that kind of ingredient to their running game again. And I think that one of the guys that has already visited that is very heavily considering Texas A&M is as Adam Muhammad from Washington. Big dude, bowling ball. That type of back is something that I think this offense desperately needs.
Yeah, and you lose two guys in Le'Veon Moss and EJ Smith. EJ Smith was kind of a surprise to me, Matt, to declare early and go into the NFL draft. Kind of hit me by surprise. But even with EJ, if he had stayed in the roster, you're still probably looking at needing a body in this room, and trying to find that 1-2 punch to go along with Ruben Owens and Jamarian Moore. I think they're both similar type of backs, which makes sense as to why you'd want to go in there and find somebody. Running back has been an interesting spot in the portal so far. You've already seen some dominoes falling, and you also see other dominoes yet to fall, a la Jaden Ball, Isaac Brown, like those two guys, top expected guys in the portal. Both, well, Ball's not in the portal, and Brown just took himself out of it. But yeah, I'm curious to see where they hit there. In terms of defense, Matt, what edge rushers do they bring in? For me, is my question. They hit massively on Cassius Howell. Massively. A guy from Bowling Green. Like, those don't come around often, even at those levels of play. So what's the deal there? Who's their guy? I just saw Quay Rousseau just went into the portal from Alabama. Keon Keeley just went in the portal from Alabama. Those are two guys that have been productive in college. Keon Keeley was a former 5-star, number 1 rated recruit coming out of high school. Kind of had a slow start to his career. It wasn't until this year that he started to be a little bit productive as a pass rusher. Wouldn't be surprised to see Texas A&M kick tires there, Matt. I found this out the other day, just kind of another receiver name to watch, and talking with a colleague over on the Georgia Tech side of things. Isaiah Canyon, the 6'4" receiver out of Georgia Tech. A&M was one of the teams mentioned to me as being in the running there. And I believe Pete Nakos later came out and confirmed that report. That's a 6'5" X receiver type. Obviously doesn't bring the production of a Cam Coleman, but I don't know if that's hey, we're going to recruit him as have as many stokes in the fire as possible, or if that's, hey, we'll take him and Cam if they both want to come here. A lot of work to do, Matt, and until January 16th, this show is probably going to strictly be transfer related news because that's just how this world revolves at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what's dominating college football right now, which is why we've been talking about it so much. The edge rushers that I'm kind of keeping my eye on, by the way, obviously Chaz Coleman was the top edge rusher in the portal. He looks like he's heading to LSU, so we won't talk about him. Florida edge rusher Jaden Woods is a guy that's very interesting. Obviously, Florida is very intent on keeping him. But he is going to take visits. He is in the portal right now. Texas A&M is on that short list. I believe Texas is on that short list as well. So he's somebody to look at. The true Cassius Howell replacement, though, that I would love to see Texas A&M go after, and I don't know if they've had communication with him yet or not. I have not found out. Is Adam Trick, 6'4", 220-pound edge rusher out of Miami of Ohio. He's a G5 guy, a MAC guy, just like Cassius Howell, very athletic. One of those guys that can be a difference maker wherever he ends up. I know he just visited Florida, but he had 8.5 sacks last season and 3 forced fumbles. He kind of seems like he'd be a real good fit at that spot.
Yeah, and there's several other potential guys that we can kind of talk about. I know there's an edge rusher out of Utah, John Henry Daly. Talk about a name right there. Not sure he's from Utah. I'm not sure if A&M's had any contact with him. Haven't seen anything on that front. Matt, I just get the sense that the edge market, there's probably a big domino that's yet to fall in terms of someone who might go into the portal. We see that so often. There's always buzz for weeks that so-and-so might go in and waste a little bit. I mean, Jaden Ball is the biggest example right now in this class. Who knows? There could be many more dominoes to fall, and there could be somebody that ends up on the market that we haven't even talked about that goes into the portal and A&M, reaches out to and starts conversations with.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked about a couple of those guys a little bit ago that Texas A&M is hosting and visits very soon. We already talked about Jalen Thompson last week out of Michigan State. We talked about Kamorian Morgan, the Baylor edge who entered the portal, who's trying to schedule a visit, and Anto Saka out of Northwestern. So a couple guys there just to keep your ear to the ground for when talking about A&M transfer news at the edge position. But we'll talk more transfer portal tomorrow. Let's change gears real quick, Harrison. We're going to talk about the CFP quarters and just a crazy, crazy weekend in college football. So stick with us after this break, and we'll be right back. There's nothing like college football season. Tailgates, packed stadiums, and being right there in the middle of it all. The energy, the bands, the moments you remember forever. But actually getting tickets, that part used to be frustrating with long queues, logins, and prices jumping at checkout. That's why Game Time gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to unlock amazing college football tickets and experiences in just a few taps. I opened the Game Time app to look at upcoming college football games like the Ole Miss game against Miami in the Fiesta Bowl. And I was surprised about how fast it was to find great seats. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKDOWNCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that is code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Well, that was a fun college football playoff quarterfinal round. I don't know what you thought about it, Harrison. I really enjoyed it. We'll start off from the top. The team that beat Texas A&M, Miami, absolutely dismantles Ohio State, 24-14, and it didn't feel that close. That defense was running around the field, making plays. They made Julian Saint's life a living hell on New Year's Eve. And it kind of makes you feel like Miami is poised to make a run at this whole thing.
It's kind of funny because I think we maybe briefly discussed the Ryan Day back to calling plays factor and what that looked like. And that guy just looked kind of out over his head again. He had been CEO Ryan Day, got back into the weeds, and that offense just didn't look the same anymore. Julian Saint didn't look the same. But yeah, Miami looks legit, man. The biggest surprise for me has been how well they've won at the line of scrimmage on offense. They're running the football well. They're able to take the ball out of Carson Beck's hands, which is their best way to win right now because you have a tremendous defense who, by all means, can get after the quarterback. And, what better way is there to put that defense in a best chance to win the game by just having a ball control offense that holds on to the football, runs the ball, and then pair it with a defense that really doesn't give up much of anything. Yeah, that was kind of the shocker to me, Matt. I assumed Ohio State was going to win that game. Wasn't expecting Ohio State to look as unorganized offensively as they did. And we knew Miami's defense was legit. Wasn't sure what they're going to be able to do offensively against an Ohio State defense that was supposedly, one of the nation's best. Just kind of shocked at that result. But look, the further and further along Miami goes, the more and more dangerous they become because that front four is legit, man. I want nothing of Akeem Mesidor and Ruben Bain as an offensive play caller. And I can't wait to see what they do in this next round because they're going to face a quarterback that gets the ball out at an insane rate in Trinidad Chambliss. Like, Georgia had guys kind of in his face throughout the game, and that guy just always has an answer, always gets the ball out, and it comes out quick. It's going to be a clash of styles.
Yeah, we'll talk about that one here in a second. Just briefly through the other two games, obviously Indiana absolutely destroys Alabama. I don't think either of us were very surprised by that one. I mean, I picked Alabama to cover, but I knew Alabama was flawed. I knew that was going to be an Indiana win. I just didn't expect it to be by that much of a gap. Alabama just looked like a shell of itself, and Indiana looks really, really, really good. And then Oregon dismantles Texas Tech. That's the theme of this segment: dismantling. The first college football playoff team to ever get shut out. You gotta love it.
Cody Campbell's about to spend a crap ton of money.
Oh yeah, they've already started. They land Brendan Sorsby in the portal, who is kind of mid in my opinion. I don't know why he commanded such a high price and got a announcement in Times Square, but that's just the kind of money that Texas A&M or Texas Tech is throwing around. Hey, you got a slightly more athletic quarterback who makes the same mistakes and really that great. So congratulations, Texas Tech. You're going to be in the same position next season unless you somehow manage to land Cam Coleman. Georgia and Ole Miss. That might have been the game of the year. That was such a good game. I was on the edge of my seat for the majority of that game, and especially in the second half. They were just going blow for blow. A couple of really, really good quarterbacks, a couple of really, really good running backs until Frazier went down. The refs were trying to keep Georgia in the game. They missed that face mask on Kawan Lacey. They had that weird series of events at the end where they kept giving Georgia one second left.
It was crazy.
Like all that stuff. But now Ole Miss moves on to the semifinals, minus Lane Kiffin, matched up against Miami. It feels like these are like that matchup is so much more exciting because, for one thing, we haven't seen it before. We've seen Oregon and Indiana, but you get two of the most exciting players in this whole tournament with Trinidad Chambliss and Ruben Bain going head to head. I'll be interested to see how Ole Miss deals with that Miami front because if I'm Ole Miss, I'm terrified of that defensive line. And if Ole Miss can run the ball effectively on Miami or any of the things above, or hey, does big game Carson Beck rear his ugly head again and finally collapse? Because he's played pretty well the last couple of weeks, which we didn't expect. This is going to be the biggest stage of his career. Can he handle it?
Yeah, it starts up front in this game for Ole Miss. I'm not impressed by their trench play. Their defensive line was disruptive over the weekend, but offensive line I don't think is particularly great. Trinidad Chambliss is just on a generational run right now. I mean, that play where he ran, to his left, all the way backwards, left towards the goal line, reverse field, goes back right, finds Gwen Lacey. 2019 Joe Burrow SC Championship, same play, similar play. Just generational play at the quarterback position. And if that continues with what they have out wide, they can win this game, Matt, and they can go all the way and potentially win it. That's the matchup I'm ready for. That's the one I'm most excited for. I think that's the biggest game here because the styles clash here. Ole Miss does a really good job of getting the ball out quick, but they're also quick on the ball. I think they're going to play it every 23 seconds. Insane tempo. They put you in conflict all the time. It's going to be a fight, and one I wish wasn't all the way out in the Fiesta Bowl. Those fan bases would show up a heck of a lot easier in Atlanta, but nonetheless, as I learned, Ole Miss fans travel and travel well. So I'm curious. The fan turnout in that game out in there in Fiesta Bowl is going to be interesting to watch.
I fully expect Ole Miss fans to be loading that place up. Interesting thought, though, if you're a Texas A&M fan or an SEC fan in general. Are you pulling for Ole Miss to win the whole thing? Like, I'm not a believer in the go SEC mentality for whatever teams in the tournament. But there's so much noise from the Big Ten. I think this year might be an exception. If you're an SEC fan, if you want to shut the Big Ten up, you got to pull for Ole Miss to win this thing, I think. And then on top of that, how cool would it be if they stuck it to Lane Kiffin? You left us, and then we won a national championship. We're better without you. I think that would be a really cool storyline. I'm pulling for them to win it all, obviously. I would imagine that half of the country is pulling for Indiana and the other half is pulling for Ole Miss. I haven't looked at the numbers, but it'll be interesting to watch. We'll make our picks later in the week for for the semifinals and all of that stuff. But it'll be a lot of fun. We're really looking forward to it. But thank you for tuning in to Locked On Aggies. Tomorrow we will get into much, much more transfer portal news, all the latest news and notes on the Aggies in the portal. So make sure you tune in for that one. And make sure you subscribe and follow Locked On Aggies to get all the latest episodes. You can find us on X at Locked On Aggies, on TikTok at Locked On Aggies. You can find me on X at Matt Galatzan. You can find Harrison on X at Harrison Reno. And if you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Aggies ad-free plus members-only Discord access and more. Head to lockedonaggies.supercast.com to join the club, or check the link in the show notes for more. And for those of you on video, we send you to the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, make sure your second listen is Locked On College Football. And we'll see you next time.